Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. This week my supporters on Patreon voted for Smaug the Impenetrable as our commander in this red-black dragon deck that also has a lot of treasure synergy. Our commander, a 7-mana 8/7 with flying, indestructible, and haste, so it can usually get the game over within 3 attacks, and then whenever Smaug is dealt non-combat damage, we get to create that many treasure tokens. So our deck is filled with red sweepers that will deal damage to each creature, so then if we have our commander in play, we get to create that many treasure tokens, and we've got a few other effects that can potentially let us generate infinite treasures if we can repeatedly target our own commander. So then if we take a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few different categories, starting with the mana acceleration, because of course we are trying to get to 7 mana to cast our commander in a timely fashion, so mostly 2 mana ramp artifacts and even a few ritual effects to spice things up. Then we've got some additional treasure token makers, which are another way of ramping into our 7-mana commander. Most of them also draw additional cards, and they also have additional synergy with the treasures we can generate off our commander. Then we've got our red sweepers that can deal damage to each creature on the battlefield, even Starve Extinction to deal 20 damage to each creature, so with Smaug in play we can make 20 treasures. Blasphemous Act can deal 13, and then the Fire Covenant is another spicy one that we don't often get to play with. Can exchange life total to deal that much damage, divided however we choose, so we can potentially target Smaug with all the life total we have to spare to generate that many treasures. Then we've got some spot removal, and most of these are also just dealing damage, so we can technically also target Smaug, and in most cases profit on the amount of treasures we generate. And Cut to Ribbons can be another nice finisher. If we do manage to make infinite mana, we can use the ribbons half out of the graveyard to close out the game. And then we get to the dragons, and these are kind of our backup win conditions that we can often cast before deploying our commander, and a lot of these also have additional treasure synergy or generate additional card advantage in some way. And then our miscellaneous section has a few more card draw effects, as well as Mayhem Devil, which is another way of potentially generating infinite treasures. We can repeatedly sacrifice a treasure, deal 1 damage to Smaug, make a replacement treasure, rinse and repeat, so that way we generate infinite mana that we can then sink into our other spells. So yeah, that's our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with our mana acceleration. Mox Opal is great when we have this many artifacts and treasures to enable metalcraft. We've got a lot of 2-mana artifacts with the Soulstone, Rakdos Signet, the Talisman, Arcane Signet, Cold Steel Heart, Guardian Idol, Mindstone, Solar Transformer, and the Iron Crag. At 3 mana, the red Orb of Dragonkind can be a way of giving our other dragons haste, especially nice with the Ancient Copper Dragon, so we can immediately roll a d20 to make that many treasures. And then the Dragon's Horde can be a way of generating some extra card advantage as we deploy our dragons, and the Worn Power Stone gets to make 2 mana once we get to untap with it. And then we also have a few ritual effects with Dark Ritual, 1 black to make triple black, so we're up 2 mana in the exchange, and Seething Song is 3 mana to make 5. And then there's Jeska's Will, gets better the more cards our opponent has in hand, can also use it to exile the top 3 if we already control our commander. And then Chandra can also ramp us, especially nice after playing a 2-mana artifact on turn 3, and then can plus to generate 2 red mana, or can also deal 4 damage to a creature. So if we have Smaug in play, we can also use the -3 to essentially make 4 treasure tokens. Then our treasure makers include Magda, making a treasure whenever she becomes tapped, and then we can sacrifice 5 treasures at any point to tutor up either an artifact or a dragon and put it straight onto the battlefield. So that's a very powerful finishing ability that can also make use of all the treasures from Smaug. Then Kalain makes a treasure when she enters, and we can get additional +1 counters on our creatures if we used our treasure tokens to cast them. Treasure Map can eventually transform into the Treasure Cove alongside 3 treasure tokens, so we can now sacrifice a treasure to draw, but in the meantime we also get to scry 1 a bunch. Then there's the Connections, can pay a life to make a treasure each turn, but can also draw cards or even make shapeshifter tokens. The Fable of the Mirror Breaker is a nice way to smooth out our draws, but if the Shaman token survives, we can also attack, making extra treasure. There's a Professional Facebreaker, which if we manage to hit the opponent makes a treasure, and we can sacrifice 1 to exile the top card of our library, and then we can play that card this turn. So another nice way to maybe make use of a whole bunch of extra treasures to turn it into card advantage. And then at 4 mana, there's Big Score, Pirate's Pillage, and Windfall, all discarding to draw 2 and making a pair of treasure tokens. Then our sweepers include Avengers Disassembled, can also blow up a land and replace it with a basic. Sweltering Suns can be cycled if we don't need to cast it. We mentioned the Fire Covenant. Desolation of Smaug is very on theme, can use the mana we get from it to cast a dragon afterwards. Storm's Wrath will deal 4 to each creature and Planeswalker. And then Star of Extinction deals 20 while blowing up a land. Blasphemous Act deals 13. Finally have the new art, so we don't have to use the weird avatar one. And then Spiteful Banditry deals X damage to each creature, and whenever an opposing creature dies for the first time each turn, we get to make a treasure token as well. Then our spot removal includes Chain Lightning, and Chain Lightning is another way we can potentially generate infinite treasures in this deck. If we target Smaug, we can copy the Chain Lightning, since it targets a permanent we control, and then we can pay 2 mana to make an extra Chain Lightning, and then we can rinse and repeat, every time dealing 3 damage to our commander, making 3 treasures, and we only have to pay 2 mana to make another copy, so with every iteration we are up 1 treasure token. It's pretty slow and clunky on Arena, but technically a way to generate infinite treasures. Then there's Flame Slash dealing 4, Galvanic Blast can deal 4 at instant speed with Metalcraft enabled, got a Lightning Bolt for 3 damage. Dragon's Fire can maybe behold a dragon to deal that much damage to any target, so we can also target our own dragon with it, so with Smaug in play, 2 mana turns into 8 treasures potentially. And Cut Propulsion deals damage to a creature equal to its power. If that creature has flying, it deals twice that much damage instead. So with Smaug, we can turn 3 mana into 16 treasures. Then there's Shadow Skull Smashing as a land or mana sink to deal a bunch of damage. And then we mentioned Cut to Ribbons, dealing 4 at sorcery speed. And then later, Ribbons can be a nice finisher. And then our dragons start out with a Decadent Dragon, which can also make treasures when it attacks, can also use the Adventure first to maybe steal some opposing cards. We've got Smaug the Magnificent, which can attack, dealing damage to any target equal to the number of treasures we control, and at the beginning of our upkeep we get 1 more treasure token as well. We've got the Bonehorde Dracosaur, a 5/5 flying first strike that can generate value each turn by exiling the top 2 cards of our library. If we exiled a land card, we get to make a 3/1 dinosaur as well. If we exiled a non-land card, we get to make a treasure token. And then there's a Dragonhawk, also exiling the top cards when it enters or attacks, based on the number of 4-powered creatures we control. And if we don't deploy any of those exiled cards, we get to deal 2 damage for each one of them. There's a Glorybringer, which we can exert to deal 4 to a non-dragon creature. There's a Goldspan Dragon, one of the better ones, making a treasure when it attacks or becomes targeted. And then treasures can be sacrificed for 2 mana going forward. There's Terror of the Peaks, dealing damage to any target whenever a creature enters under our control equal to its power. There's a Twin Flame Tyrant, doubling our damage output when it comes to targeting opposing permanents or our opponent directly, so our creatures also deal double damage. There's Smaug Wicked Worm, generates a number of tapped treasures equal to the number of artifacts our opponent controls, and then whenever we cast a spell, if mana from treasures was spent to cast it, we get to draw a card at the cost of 1 life. There's the Ancient Copper Dragon, gets much more exciting with haste, and then if it deals damage to a player, we get to roll a d20, make that many treasures. Bladewing the Risen, a way to reanimate dragons from our graveyard, including Smaug if it got answered somehow, and then can also pay mana to pump up our dragons. And then the Hoarding Broodlord can tutor up whatever card we want, exile it, and even cast it through Convoke. And then our miscellaneous section has a bit more card draw with Night's Whisper and the One Ring, which can also be a powerful artifact we can maybe tutor up. And then we've got Mayhem Devil, as we mentioned, to generate infinite treasures with Smaug in play. And then a Crux of Fate can be a nice one-sided board wipe, destroying all non-dragon creatures. And then Dracogenesis, a way to cast our dragons for free, so that way we only have to worry about paying the commander tax on Smaug, which makes it much easier to deploy in grindy matchups. And then our mana base has a couple artifact lands to help enable Metalcraft early on. Arena of Glory can be important to give some of our dragons haste. Plenty of red-black dual lands. There's Cavern of Souls to make our dragons uncounterable. The Enclave can be a source of extra cards, especially for generating infinite treasures. And then plenty of fetch lands. Fountain Port can also generate treasures or sacrifice tokens to draw. The Gemstone can give us a mana boost when on the draw. Haven of the Spirit Dragon, a way to get back dragons from our graveyard. And then the Maelstrom can tutor up whatever dragon we want. Inventor's Fair will often gain a life and can also later sacrifice it to maybe get the One Ring. Library of Alexandria, nice in our opening hand as a way of drawing extra cards each turn. And then, yeah, mostly just fetch lands. Urborg can also potentially turn our lands into swamps, and Treasure Vault another artifact land. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw, facing the Mighty Thor, so a blue-white equipment deck. Our hand has potential, just need a third artifact to enable Metalcraft. And while Treasure Map doesn't immediately ramp, eventually it will. Opponent keeping up 2 mana, so hopefully they don't counter the map. I'll take a Signet. So, yeah, I guess I can start with Signet and next turn map activate. Either way, Signet resolves. Can also immediately go for Pirate Spillage, Soul Herder away to Flicker, the Mighty Thor. So they might not be leaning too much into the equipment. So yeah, good options. Pirate Spillage does also enable Mox Opal, so then I can still play a Treasure Map afterwards if I'd like. Probably don't have time for Decadent Dragon. Yeah, I can go Mox into Cold Steel Heart, use 1 treasure to get a permanent mana source. And name, doesn't matter. Avengers Disassembled could be nice. Although we have enough mana to cast Smaug next turn. Never mind, Witch Enchanter. Yeah, flickered by Soul Herder is extra painful. Because now we're going to lose 2 artifacts. So that was a blowout. And we have to cast Avengers Disassembled here. Found a Signet, so can still play that first, enabling Metalcraft. So the game's not over yet, at least. Opponent gets a Plains. So then next turn we can get a Treasure Map going, perhaps. Simulacrum gets a land. Could also go for Smaug, although then we lose Metalcraft, so then it's going to be pretty hard to replay my commander if they do have an answer. So it's a tricky spot. Blue-white can have some removal that exiles, which gets around indestructible. So, yeah, maybe this is Treasure Map plus Dragonhawk, or start with Dragonhawk and see what's up. Won't be able to play Fountain Port now, so probably shouldn't have played my land yet, in hindsight. I'll keep the treasure token for now. The Water Skin can make mana in both turns. And the Mighty Thor. So yeah, they could still have a Swords to Plowshares up for all we know. I'll start by attacking here, I think. Even though I only have the 1 creature for Dragonhawk. Find a Twin Flame, which is good value. And then now we can play the Treasure Map. Set an upkeep stop. Meteor Golem can blow up my creature, and then Mighty Thor can flicker to do it all over. Yeah, this is pretty obnoxious. So yeah, Smaug would have lined up fine as an indestructible threat. I'm probably better off digging for an answer with a Brute Lord. So play the Brute Lord, and then Yeah, I should probably deal with the Meteor Golem as opposed to the Mighty Thor, since I don't think I can deal with both here. So then I guess Flame Slash comes to mind. As a 1-mana removal spell, could also get a Lightning Bolt. Or Galvanic Blast, all of those are fine. Let's go with a Flame Slash. Alright, so we've got a Broodlord in play. And next turn we can maybe go for Smaug. Now Lightning Greaves to protect their creature. And Simulacrum. Well, at least the Broodlord can still block the Mighty Thor. Inventor's Fair gains a life, and then we'll scry with a map. Don't feel the need to sack the Inventor's Fair just yet. Shadow Skull Smashing, not a priority. And Dark Ritual to draw. Yeah, let's give this a try. Smaug resolves. Would be an attack for 15. Yeah, if they have something like Solitude, they could exile both of my creatures next turn, so then it doesn't matter that I keep the Broodlord on defense. So I'll just send both. Opponent takes it, falls to 3. Don't think there's any burn spell I can get with Inventor's Fair. They will blink the Simulacrum. They could have also chumped the Mighty Thor, but then I guess because of Shroud they couldn't have targeted their own creature to save it. Our opponent fetches down to 2. Archive to Surveil. And yeah, they've got more flicker effects. And the Seminar gets back Meteor Golem, so that can destroy the Broodlord. And that's not the play. Smaug does have a keyword, and that keyword is Indestructible. Mighty Thor attacks, gets to flicker Meteor Golem, can blow up the Broodlord, but then they still need to find a 2-mana answer to Smaug. And then gain a life, can scry, and our opponent has given up. I'll take it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw here, facing Rhys the Redeemed, so green-white tokens. Well, our deck does have a couple board wipes. We have a pretty pricey one in hand, but can hope to maybe still ramp into it. And a Pilgrim, we can Galvanic Blast. Opponent with more ramp. Now Seething Song is one way of casting our Star of Extinction, although it's also tempting to try and play Smaug first. Opponent passes with mana up, they can make a token with Rhys. So this turn I can go Orb into Flame Slash without wasting my treasure. Deal with a Mystic. So then next turn we can certainly cast one of our 7-drops already. Against a white deck it's possible they can exile Smaug. Now we Scout the Wilderness, makes a pair of soldiers. And the Iron Crag. So, yeah, I think it's reasonable to go Iron Crag into Seething Song, and then play Smaug an attack. And then as long as I draw a land, I can still cast Star of Extinction next turn. I will not be transforming. So hope they just tap out, making more tokens. Trostani is perfect. And yeah, since I'm gonna wipe the board, I may as well trump here. At least if I draw the land, which I did. Alright. Target your castle. Hope not to get mana tithed. And that's a satisfying sweeper. Make 20 treasures. So now Inventor's Fair can also tutor up the One Ring. But our opponent may be dead before that happens. GG's. Opponent down to 5, replays Rhys. And Rosie. And there we have it. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Iron Man, Titan of Innovation, so kind of a blue-red artifact toolbox deck. Our hand's keepable, turn 2 Talisman, turn 3 Chandra, can even make mana to cast Cut. Although Iron Man does have haste, so can immediately pressure our Planeswalker. Opponent surveils, I'll likely be doing the same, small chance we need to Lightning Bolt. Although I can also cast it off a Talisman. And then we'll have to wait and see if our opponents build their deck with a bunch of counter spells, in which case Cavern of Souls could be useful. So now 3 mana, still nothing. Alright, I guess we'll try Chandra. That resolves, can just deal 2 damage.
My hair is on fire? Oh, this is...
Now Hedron Archive, so next turn they can play Iron Man, maybe sack a 4-drop to get a 5. And yeah, Cut is a sorcery, so that's not a great answer. But of course we can also play Smaug. And then potentially just keep it on defense.
You're going down.
To protect Chandra. Although is there a 5-drop they can get that would answer Smaug? Mindstone and Weakstone doesn't quite do it. So yeah, maybe playing defense is better. It's a close call. If I hit them for 8, they're under quite a bit of pressure, and then maybe Ribbons can finish them off. So, yeah, I guess we'll play it this way. Since 4 damage is not quite enough to finish off Chandra. Alright, opponent's got a Metamorph. Copies my Smaug. Yeah, that's even better than Iron Man. So they could finish off Chandra. And they decide to go face. And a Chainsaw is next. Can target their own Smaug to make 3 treasures. So they're up 1 mana in the exchange. And now a Thought Monitor can still be played. Okay, opponent's definitely going off. Anything else? Opponent's gonna pass it back. So I'm super close to presenting lethal here, I feel. Could cut on my own Smaug to make more treasure. Yeah, so let's fetch. They do seem to be holding something here. So I'll start with cut on Smaug. See if that works. Make for treasure. Chandra could also deal 4 to Smaug, so maybe that's the way to go. Bolt the Thought Monitor, and then ribbons for the win if there's no counterspell. So I need a ribbons for 6. Let's see. I guess I can still pay for the counterspell with improvise. So that seems better than also playing an Iron Crag. Did we figure it out? Can be the Hammer of Thor to deal 2 to each creature, which gives us both 2 treasures, and our opponent explodes. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Rofellos. Definitely the type of commander where we need a cheap answer to keep up with it. This hand does not have it, but we do have a Seething Song, which can set up a Glorybringer with haste. So I guess that's still good enough. Turn 1 Surveil, turn 2 Night's Whisper, and then if they tap out for Rofellos, we can still catch it with an Exerted Glorybringer. So that's the plan. And if they don't go for Rofellos, maybe we get to save Seething Song for Smaug. Don't think I need the Ancient Copper Dragon here. Desolation of Smaug. I can also cast with the mana from Seething Song and then still play Glorybringer, or even better, Dracosaur. So that was a great draw. So yeah, let's go ahead and Seething Song into Desolation. And play Bonehorde Dracosaur. Since we don't need the removal from Glorybringer right away, next turn maybe get to make a treasure. Perfect. And a Mayhem Devil can also help us go infinite with Smaug. Saved my Fabled Passage, which can also trigger off Mayhem Devil, and our opponent has seen enough. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Mr. Negative, a black-white life gain control deck, or life loss control deck, I should say. They're going to actively lose life themselves, and then at some point swap it to reap the rewards. So, I mean, the One Ring is a powerful card draw engine, but it could also be sketchy. In a way, we actively want to lose life ourselves, so that when they swap, their life total is also lower. But yeah, it's definitely a tricky matchup. Inquisition takes Talisman. And yeah, could play the Smashing untapped. Facebreaker coming up. Opponent with their Cold Steel Heart. I guess I prefer the Horde, so we can maybe play the Tyrant next turn. Facebreaker is more impactful if we can immediately make a treasure or make use of some of our treasure. Okay, opponent keeping up a bunch of mana. They know about Tyrant. Although if I play it, I still get a counter on the Horde, which is decent. Could also get the One Ring going, I suppose. Yeah, that's also fine. Opponent's gonna Demolition Field, so they can maybe get more white mana. Could draw now with the ring, although it's not like I have a lot of 1-drops I could find. So I'm trying to make use of my life total before they take it away from me. Opponent's gonna draw 2 with their own Sign in Blood. Yeah, it's unlikely that Smaug is gonna stick around for long, because our opponent will likely have ways to exile it. Okay, so now the Facebreaker looks a bit better. Can still draw with the One Ring. And then can wait on Inventor's Fair. We're only dealing 1 damage to ourselves, or our future life total, I should say. So that's not too bad. Opponent with a Replicating Ring. So next turn they could already play Mr. Negative. You have to be careful, because if they have something like the various Necro enchantments, they can go down to 1, and then I end up losing to the One Ring. Fire Covenant could lower my own life total, but then they have no incentive to play Mr. Negative. So then I have to imagine they have an answer for Smaug in hand. So I might want to wait until I can play Smaug and immediately make a ton of treasure. So for now, start by attacking. Maybe only send the human token, because if they have removal for Facebreaker, it dies anyway. As opposed to the token. Make a treasure. Yeah, could once again draw with a ring. Maybe try and find some more ramp. Take a Cold Steel Heart. And Avengers Disassembled just to destroy a land is probably not worth it. Although I guess I could go for the castle. Sure. Because they're somewhat likely to activate it on the way out. So they get to lose 5 life. But yeah, if they tap out for Mr. Negative, we're pretty happy. Because then we can go Smaug into Propulsion. And we'll probably figure something out with all that mana. It's going to be a Day of Judgment. And gain 1, lose 3. Find a Chain Lightning. So I could play Smaug, try Chain Lightning for Infinite Treasure. If they have Instant Speed Exile in response, I could still Propulsion to make enough treasure to redeploy my stuff. Definitely a tricky spot when they're keeping up mana, but they're unlikely to tap out at any point. So maybe I'm still better off using the ring. Now Big Score and Seething Song are both nice. So now I could maybe Seething Song out Smaug. Try the Chain Lightning. And then I can still Propulsion in response. Okay, so then I'll pay the 2. Copy Chain Lightning. Make 3 treasure. Alright, so we're making infinite treasure here, although it's a pretty slow process. But it's nice that we get to showcase this interaction. It's a lot of clicking just to make 1 treasure each time. Opponent could also be holding Settle the Wreckage. If we go to attack to exile my creatures. So how many treasures do we have? 10. It's quite a bit. Probably enough for now. Yeah, I can try targeting my opponent now. Play the Twin Flame, which is not indestructible, so that one they could maybe more easily answer. But it's worth a try. Because if just Smaug hits, they're still dead to the lightning bolts. Alright, opponent's got a Dismember. So then we still deal 6, which is not quite enough. And then now I risk losing to my own Wandering if they swap life totals. So maybe there was a reason to second main Fire Covenant, but then they don't have to play Mr. Negative. So there was a lot to consider here. Although I guess never mind, with the Twin Flame, if they tap out, Lightning Bolt deals 6. So we actually have lethal available at instant speed still. But I'll wait for them to make a move. Opponent fetches down to 4, so now Wandering would be lethal if it weren't for Inventor's Fair gaining 1 life. Make them play Mr. Negative. So they have 2 mana left. So if they have instant speed removal for Twin Flame, I suppose our opponent falls to 1 and then I die. I'll just try this to see if there's any response from our opponents. There doesn't seem to be. Can still big score first, just to dig a bit more. Jaska's Will. That's a sorcery. Alright, let's go for it. A Lightning Bolt for 6. That works. Alright. Well, this was a pretty silly game, but yeah, goes to show that there are some neat combos with Smaug to generate infinite treasures, even if some are maybe easier to pull off than others. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Raph and Mikey. A pretty poor matchup, since our removal is mostly damage-based and does not tend to deal 7 damage. So, yeah, this hand certainly a mulligan. This hand has a bunch of acceleration, so we can try to just ramp out Smaug as soon as possible. Although we'll still need something on top of that, since our opponent gets to maybe cheat out an Emrakul, and then we still have to deal with that. But yeah, maybe if we can figure out a way to make infinite treasures, we can find a way to close it out. So turn 1, Surveil. And a Pirate's Pillage is not perfect, but maybe still above average. Play Cold Steel Heart. Next turn we can double 2-drop or play the Pillage. Which in turn will set up our 7-drop. But yeah, play Smaug, keep it on defense is not the kind of play you happily make. Although their opponent maybe has a slower start themselves. So then possible they kept the hand with a ritual effect. I'll go for the double ramp, since treasures are fleeting. It's gonna be an exploration. A little late to the party, but they still have some lands in hand. So yeah, the next turn they could still cast their commander. Okay, Star of Extinction's interesting. So play Smaug. And yeah, at 20 life I would die if they cheat out Emrakul next turn, so I can't afford to. But Starve Extinction is an answer. Would also make 20 treasures. Alright, let's see what happens. Raph and Mikey attack. Puts in Old Gnawbone. Alright, so then... doesn't matter too much what I block, they'll get 7 treasures no matter what. Does make the Starve Extinction slightly less exciting, since they can just replay Raph and Mikey next turn. But I imagine it's still correct to go for it. And blow up your... doesn't matter. I get 20 treasures. Pillage, discard, probably the Dragon's Hoard. Find treasure map. Yeah, not quite what I needed here. So we can play the map. Scry. But I'm still not in a position where I can attack. Since they have the mana to just redeploy Raph and Mikey next turn. Make sure to set an upkeep stop so I can treasure map again. So Raph and Mikey are back. And what do they get this time around? Tower of Mount Velas for double strike. So then I believe I'm dead. Even if we block Raph and Mikey, they still get to trample for 7, so we take 17. Alright, that was unlucky. But I think this is kind of a poor matchup, unless you were to add more instant speed black removal spells that can deal with their commander. But that's not very synergistic with Smaug. Alright, GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Facing a Vivi, a must-answer commander. We do have a Fire Covenant, which can deal with it. And a Lightning Bolt maybe can catch it before they get a counter on it as well. So turn 1 likely to Surveil. And then got a couple powerful 5-drops. Opponent might have some ramp artifacts which can enable the Wicked Worm. For now they're just going to keep up 2 mana. Possible they have a 0 mana card to enable Vivi right away. So then I do get punished for tapping out for a Night's Whisper. Glorybringer is nice, but we already have 2 5-drops in hand, so I don't think I can afford to keep it here. Need to find more mana. So, 1 card has to go. Can make it the Blood Crypt now. There's Vivi. And no follow-up, so Lightning Bolt could be enough. Assuming there's no free interaction, which there certainly could be. Yeah, I guess I can test out the waters with a Talisman. See if there's any response. There doesn't seem to be. So then we'll bolt Vivi. They could have had a Daze, pick up Thundering Falls. Or a Force of Negation is still legal. And then now we're in a position to cast our 5-drops. Unlikely to resolve. But maybe start with a Twin Flame. And then Kalane and Wicked Worm have some synergy. Alright, that's resolves for now. Vivi's back. Can just deal with it once again. And go Kalane plus Fire Covenants. And then I only need to Covenant for 2, since the damage gets doubled. And attack for 6. So then Smaug is representing 16 more damage. So we could attack for lethal next turn if there's no more interaction. They will answer Kalane. But yeah, some of their burn spells might struggle to deal 5 damage. And they don't have a whole lot of colored mana left, just a reflecting pool can make blue or red. So, yeah, could try Smaug. The Impenetrable, that is. Seems worth a shot. Now, do they have a counterspell? They do, Mana Leak. Okay. Can try again next turn. So it's not like they can tap out for Vivi. Resolve, find land, and a shove aside. Also have the Maelstrom, which can tutor up a dragon. Alright, they might have an answer to the Tyrant. Fire Magic to finish it off. So then we can still get in for 8. Wicked Worm now off Arena can also gain haste. But yeah, the Impenetrable seems more impactful. Opponent down to 4. So they need some bounce spell to maybe deal with my commander. Okay, Pyretic. Access to 8 mana. Is this a Mystic's Mastery? It's a Treasure Cruise. So draw 3. Still 7 mana remains for a Mystical Tutor. Can put something on top, but will they survive for another turn? Unless they can maybe draw into whatever they kept on top. But they only have 1 blue source remaining. So it's unlikely to work out. I guess they can also activate Monastery. So if they put like a 1 mana bounce spell on top, they could have activated Monastery and cast it. Opponent with a Dramatic Reversal. That doesn't do anything, but now Empty the Warrens was the big finish. So they were just trying to storm off as much as possible. Okay, so their opponent gets all the goblins they want, but yeah, much like in The Hobbit, the terrifying dragon does not care about puny little goblins. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a pretty decent hand facing Ziatora the Incinerator, so a Junt sacrifice deck. Yeah, we've got some mana acceleration and then some powerful 5 mana dragons, especially the Dracosaur can maybe bridge the gap to playing Smaug. But they do have the turn 1 Birds of Paradise. And get to Surveil. And Inventor's Fair is probably okay for now. Need to hit a few more land drops. Play the Signets. Opponent's tutoring with Assemble the Team. So they might be looking for some additional mana acceleration or some combo pieces. Ziatora with high-powered creatures like the Trudge. The recent printing from Strixhaven is pretty powerful. Okay, Kalane the draw. So we can play the Horde and then still play Kalane afterwards. And then we'll have 3 artifacts for Inventor's Fair, so that's online. And an Ice Still is very powerful, especially with a fetch land, which they have. So yeah, next turn we can already go for Smaug the Impenetrable, which does require a very specific answer, which they may not have. Mountain's good enough. And then the Horde picks up a counter. Smaug enters with 1 extra counter thanks to Kalain. And our opponent's already down to 10. They need a way to exile Smaug or make me sacrifice it. Toxic Deluge for 8 is probably not going to cut it here. So yeah, they're just going for something big. And yeah, opponent realizes that they're too far behind. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Tatyova, a blue-green landfall deck. Not going to be an easy matchup, but we have a functional hand. Got some ramp, some card draw, some interaction. Mostly worried about counter spells stopping Smaug, but most landfall decks tend to be more focused on enabling their own synergies. Twin Flame with haste could be fun. Alright, now a Jeska's Will. Will be better if they still have a bunch of cards in hand, but that may not be the case. It's going to be the Legend of Karuk. Scry to then draw. So Jeska's Will is +1 mana right now. Probably not worth going for. Instead, I could Windfall or go Orb into a Knight's Whisper. Orb makes a mana of any color, otherwise I could have also tapped slightly differently. Star of Extinction's interesting. Yeah, depending on their situation. Maybe Jeska's Will into Smaug, and then turn after Star of Extinction. Okay, Sphinx's Tutelage, so they're planning to mill me out. That's their win condition. Fire Covenant may be a way to make a lot of mana with Smaug in play. I guess this turn we're just going for a Twin Flame, or I could still Windfall with the idea of setting up a 7-drop next turn. Twin Flame would hit for 6, and then next turn I could possibly hit for another 22, so that could just be lethal. So I don't mind the extra pressure here. And then after they're done milling me, I can Surveil to maybe try and hit a line drop for next turn. Especially if they don't have a lot of cards in hand for Jeska's Will. And there's Tatyova. Currently only green mana available, so I guess Tatyova also gains a bit of life. But yeah, currently still scheduled to deal 22 if we find a land. Right, crop rotation will maybe change the equation a bit. Can get a fetch land, although most fetch lands also lose a life. I'm sure our opponent's also doing the math now. They could get one of the new Capenna fetches that gains a life. Nope, still going for Prismatic Vista. Does give them access to blue mana if they do have some counter magic. So back up to 21. 5 cards in hand, so Jeska's Will is also looking pretty good here. And this is one of our few tap lands. Fountain Port is untapped. So I could still Jeska's Will, which generates 2 extra mana. Is that relevant? If they have like a Daze, maybe? If they have Negate, I get punished for casting it. Yeah, I'll try it. Alright, that seemed to resolve pretty easily. And then it's 3 to equip, so no real points. Alright, that's just 22 damage. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Rofellos once again, and once again our hand features a Seething Song. So, Banditry for 1, an answer to Rofellos, and then we can maybe ramp out something big. So start by Surveilling. On the draw, this hand would have been a little sus, because then Banditry for 1 would not have been cast in time. Opponent does have a Utopia Sprawl. And Dragonhawk. I think I'm gonna decline. A library I'm not gonna get a chance to activate, most likely, but yeah, I'll still play it. If they don't go for Rofellos, then maybe next turn I'll consider drawing. Alright, so then I need to get a mountain. And Banditry for 1. And we get a treasure. Now next turn they can already replay Rofellos once again. So ideally we find a removal spell. But I can already play a 7-drop next turn, so not quite enough for Broodlord, but can play Smaug. Rofellos is indeed back, and a Fire Covenant to draw. Would be even more exciting with Smaug in play, so maybe I do give them a turn where they get to untap with Rofellos, and then we just get to make all the mana we want while answering their board next turn. Seems like a fine compromise. So, Seething Song into Smaug. And mono green is going to struggle to deal with an indestructible creature. But we'll see. There are certainly combinations that can win them the game here. With a forest, Rofellos taps for 4, so then they have 9 mana total. It's going to be a Vorinclex, and that's fine. So they did not have a forest in hand, but they get to search 2 of them up. There is a world where they can make their team indestructible, and then we're still in trouble. Frenzied Baloth says damage cannot be prevented, but that doesn't get around indestructible. Alright, time for a juicy Fire Covenant. So I have 20 life. Yeah, pretty sure we can figure out a lethal here. So, Fire Covenant. I can use 19 total. And then 6 to Vorinclex, the rest to Smaug. Make a whole bunch of treasure. Play Hoarding Broodlord, and want to make sure not to tap my creature here, so I'll do it manually. 6, 7, 8. Play Broodlord. And then now I could get, let's see, we've got Dragonhawk in the graveyard. So I could get Bladewing, cast it, or I can go for Mayhem Devil, which is a way of making infinite mana, as well as dealing with her board. Yeah, did not mean to tap my creatures, but so it goes. So yeah, for now we can just wipe their board. And then with the mana, I can still play the Dragon's Horde. Okay, and pass a turn. So I can Galvanic Blast my own Smaug, which in turn can make 4 treasures, so I can split up the damage if needed. Opponent's got a Kogla. So they're probably trying to fight the Mayhem Devil. Same response. Could also deal damage to Smaug here, but there's no real reason to do so right now. Just want to make sure we deal with Kogla before the fight happens. And our opponent has seen enough. Alright, sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're up against Raph and Mikey once again. Still a difficult matchup, that hasn't changed, but maybe we'll get a bit luckier this time around. None of our removal is really instant speed that can deal with a 7/7, so that's part of the problem. But yeah, I think I got a mulligan. Dragon's Fire. If I draw a big dragon with Galvanic Blast, could be an answer to Raph and Mikey, but it's still kind of a stretch. And the rest of my hand's not exciting. Okay, Jeska's Will and Dark Ritual, now we're cooking. So, let's see, I can go turn 2, Dark Ritual, make 3, have 4 mana for Jeska's Will. So then if our opponent has 6 cards in hand, we get to play Smaug. So don't really need the Soul Stone. And then turn 1 I get to Surveil. Keep the Fire Covenant, which can then make 20-something treasures if we target our own creature as well. And Chandra is a mana sink, I suppose. So yeah, a Ritual into Jeska's Will. Turn 2 Smaug. That's pretty ridiculous. Even have a mana left, so could have kept the Soul Stone, I suppose, but there was always a chance they had some 1 mana play. So we have a pretty fast clock. But yeah, it's mainly the Fire Covenant I'm excited about. Still have to be somewhat careful not to deal ourselves too much damage. But yeah, how about a Fire Covenant for 15? Just to make 15 treasures. Play Chandra. Plus, and I can still cast a Glory Bringer now, which is why I did this all in my first main phase. So, turn 1 Smaug, turn 2 Glory Bringer plus Chandra. Still have 6 treasures left. So, definitely an unconventional game. Opponent with a regrowth. So there is a world where they can also cast their commander next turn, but yeah, they're not gonna live to tell the tale. Alright, sweet. So yeah, we got to see our red-black Dragons deck in action, and there's certainly a lot of ways you can build around Smaug. Some focus more on generating those infinite treasures to maybe combo off and deal infinite damage that way. Some are maybe more focused on the dragon synergies. I think we found a decent middle ground where we're mainly still a dragon ramp deck, but we also have some of those treasure sacrifice synergies where we can potentially generate infinite mana to win the game. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.